good people over at Bleacher Report. They always write very entertaining articles, I would say. And they had three dream scenario targets for your Detroit Pistons. And those three targets were Brandon Ingram, Dennis Schroder, and Malcolm Brogdon. So I want to ask you, Zar, out of those three, which one intrigues you the most?
I would have to go Brandon Ingram. And unfortunate saying that now as he just suffered an ankle sprain, but um, I look at Malcolm Brogdon, I look at Dennis Schroder, and those are two pieces that could definitely help this team objectively. They need help in the turnover department still. That's still an issue for them. Malcolm Brogdon is a vet who knows how to take care of the ball and is also really respectable on defense, while Dennis Schroder provides more of an offensive punch while still being a respectable defender. But to me, I think the Pistons are at a crossroads right now. I feel as if this is a team that, as currently constructed, is meant to be competitive, which is good. That's progress. But this is a team that has an emerging superstar in Cade Cunningham, and I don't say that word lightly. Like I genuinely do believe Cade Cunningham is becoming a superstar in front of our eyes. It's what you do with that, right? And it's just kind of the way the NBA is. Yes, you can rely on internal development, and trading for a second star isn't always throwing in all your chips. I mean, the Pistons have so many young chips at this point, like it would be impossible to trade all of them away for one player, just also with the way the CBA is constructed right now. So the Detroit Pistons, if, and it doesn't have to be this season, I guess, but if they do want to make that next step towards not just fighting for a play-in spot, but being a playoff team, is going to have to be going for that second star. And it doesn't have to mean trading away Ivy, or it doesn't have to, like, it does mean, though, one of those pieces will have to go. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast. You look at Dallas in Luka's early tenure, they made the trade for Kristaps. Celtics drafted Jason Tatum, and Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward were soon to follow, right? Like, they still had Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, but they had all these moving pieces. And De'Aaron Fox, even, like, to a lesser extent, they went out and got Domantas Sabonis for him. Trae Young, they got DeJounte Murray. Those are the types of moves, and not all of them worked, to be fair, but those are the types of moves you kind of have to make when you have a player on that type of caliber, when you're trying to make that next step, and especially considering that his rookie contract is up this year. This is the last year of that deal, and this is the last year where you'll kind of have that flexibility without his extension coming into play. So I think that if they do make a move, it would be a good time, as they do have some more flexibility than they will. Not saying they're going to be hard capped or anything like that, but it will be a little more difficult to make those types of moves going forward. And I feel like Brandon Ingram does fit the mold of second star on this team that they can rely on in moments where, like, Cade isn't having an offensive night that he was having last night, where it's 29, 10, and 15. You need someone to rely on, and it's not saying that can't be Ivy, or that Ivy would be involved in a trade like this, but it is saying that, like, maybe Ivy gets bumped to 3 on that totem pole, which I think is more comfortable for him right now as his game is currently constructed, just because I don't think last year was a year of development gone, right? Like, that's a year that you can say was wasted development. It's not his fault. But at the same time, if you're trying to win games, and if that's your priority, you can't rely on someone who's not really found out how to win games yet, or how to, score in important games yet. So I think Brandon Ingram does fit that mold. And I think, like, the offensive creation that he comes with is hard to replicate.
Yeah, and I know his name has been floated around probably since this past summer, just because of the New Orleans connection, obviously, with Trajan Langdon and Michael Blackstone and others, which I understand. My only thing with Ingram is I know the price is going to be expensive. There was a report this week from Jake Fisher that he's looking to get paid $40 million annually, which is a lot. Not saying he isn't worth it, but to your point, you had mentioned Cade Cunningham's, rookie max extension will go into effect next season. Do you really want to have a a team that's spending close to $90 million on 2 players. I know eventually, to your point, like they have to go and try to get a 20-point per game scorer next to him. To me, I would probably try to get him more of a secondary ball handler next to him, kind of like how Houston did with Fred VanVleet. I think that's the type of player that Cade personally needs, where he doesn't really have to have the ball in his hands 100% of the time. And if he goes to the bench, you don't have to just kind of hold your breath and hoping that they can, keep a lead. Because last night, like that was kind of like the case. Like when he went to the bench, they were up 16. The lead went down to like 4 in the third quarter. I think with this list, I can understand a Schroder to an extent. I can understand a Malcolm Brogdon to an extent, but I think it would have to be a tier above that. Kind of like how Dallas traded for Kyrie Irving. I think that would be, not saying that like go get Kyrie Irving, even though he's a free agent this summer. I don't know if he wants to come to Detroit, but hey, you never know. I think for me, when I look at Cade's game and I look at Ingram's game, not saying it couldn't work, but I think you need a little bit more help in the backcourt. And I know they have Jaden Ivey. I like Jaden Ivey a lot. I think he's taken huge steps in development and progression this season, but I don't really know if a Brandon Ingram can really elevate this team from, let's say, like they're a play-in team this year to maybe a top 5 seed. I mean, am I crazy to think that?
No, I mean, I don't think Brandon Ingram is like, it wouldn't be like trading for like prime Paul George, right? Like it wouldn't be like the OKC Indiana type of thing. It would be more just like adding that extra help. Now it's expensive help, like you mentioned, and I don't know if he is 100% the best fit, nor do I know if he would even be a great fit for the type of team that JB seems to want. However, of the 3 available, I do feel like he does fit that more, and I do also think he is more of a playmaker than he gets credit for. There's a lot of times where he was running point throughout the last couple of seasons. And I think that is a really valuable skill that, when you talk about like having the ball come off of Cade's hands a little more, like that's something that, he's able to take the responsibility for. So I know Brandon Ingram is a flawed player. Like he's not the next Kevin Durant like he was built to be, nor is he like a perennial all-star. But does he have seasons where I do think he can be an all-star? Absolutely. And right now, like, there's no player like that, really. Like it's Ivy and gap, like
Yeah.
considerable gap. Like Ivy, yes, has that potential, but for me, the thing Ivy really needs to figure out is how to put it together for, more than just a few games at a time. Everybody's going to have off games here and there, but when you're having a stretch of 11 point, 13 point, 14-point games, where the impact is not as tangible, that's not an indictment on him, but that's also not a second option on a good team right now. Not saying he can't be, again, because I know a lot of times when you say something about Ivy, because he has a lot of fans in this fan base, including me. But I don't think he's ready to have that type of role yet. And I think that also plays a part in the turnovers. And I think that's a lot of pressure to put on him. And I don't know if he's 100% ready for it yet.
I just kind of want to follow up with your Ivy stuff because I know the last time you were on a podcast, you got branded as a Jaden Ivey hater, which was wild to me because he didn't really say anything out of bounds. What you said of him, like maybe not being ready to be a second option, that's okay. I don't expect him to go into, what is this, his 3rd season, being able to average 20 points a game. If he can, cool. I think he's like around 18, maybe. But to your point, it's a consistency thing with him. And I think over time throughout the season, he'll understand that for him to impact winning with this team, he's going to have to be a little bit more consistent. I do think this year overall, from this season to last season, huge steps in development. And I'm very happy and excited that he has a coach that actually wants to play him and not have him off the bench and getting DNPs for whatever reason. But I think overall, kind of just to wrap up this topic, Pistons do need a another 20 point per game score, in my personal opinion. I don't know where it's going to come from. Maybe it'll be in free agency. Maybe you go and get a stretch five. Maybe you look to get more help at small forward. I don't really know. But to your point, I think the time is ticking because that rookie. What's that?
Do you think a Zach Lavine fits this team?
It does, but the contract doesn't.
Yes. However, there's only 2 more years on that deal. You know, I have been looking at that in terms of just, options for the Pistons moving forward. And again, that's not a deal that has to replace Jaden Ivey at all. That's just I think they need a dynamic scorer in that starting lineup pretty badly. Tobias thus far has been serviceable, but he hasn't given you the 17, 18, or 19 points per game that a good year in Philadelphia or the Clippers or even the Pistons before that kind of look like. And to me, that's why you gave Tobias Harris $25 million. Not obviously to say that he hasn't had any impact, because I'm sure, culturally in the locker room, he makes a big difference. A lot of the guys seem to look to him for leadership, but on the court, Tobias isn't really, I don't think this is crazy to say, I don't think he's much of an upgrade over like a Boyan. Like he plays a different game where he can put his back to the basket more than Boyan did, or drive to the basket more than he did. But in terms of impact, I can't necessarily say like there's been a huge step up in terms of production. And I feel like that's something that, they're really missing. And I think Malik Beasley does an incredible job of being that offensive punch for them. The minutes he's been getting, he's been maximizing. And I think he's been like the shooter for them, like by far.
Mm-hmm.
But I really do feel like with a dynamic scorer like a Zach Lavine in the lineup, it would add a lot. And I think he complements Cade's game offensively so well. Not to say I think he's the savior or the answer to, their issues or anything like that, but I do think it's worth a look.
Yeah, I think he's definitely a player that makes a lot of sense on paper. The track record, obviously, you can kind of look to his Minnesota days. You can look to his Chicago days. They haven't done a whole lot of winning. And I don't know if you can really point to him for the reason why they haven't done a whole lot of winning. I mean, when Lonzo Ball was healthy and that whole Bulls team was clicking, they were one of the better Eastern Conference teams, but that was a few years ago. And a lot of people had them as just like an Eastern Conference favorite. To kind of get to you, like the Tobias Harris thing, Tobias Harris thing. Wow, say that 3 times fast. I think in terms of Boyan, the only difference I've seen with him is defensively, he's not a traffic cone.
True.
And he rebounds. I think this year he's done a really good job at rebounding the basketball.